Society puts marathon runners on this pedestal. We see them as the absolute pinnacle of health and discipline. But honestly, I think we're getting it all wrong. For so many of these people, running 26 miles has nothing to do with fitness.
No, really, if you dig into the psychology, it's something else entirely. It's a socially acceptable form of self-harm. It's an extreme addiction, a way to physically run away from some deep, unresolved trauma.
Whoa. Okay, that is incredibly harsh. I mean, what you're calling self-harm, I see as the ultimate manifestation of human grit. It's about mastery over your own mind. You can't just slap a label like trauma response on that kind of extreme discipline. So let's start there, with the most fundamental question.
Right. Why would anyone do this? We are literally hardwired evolutionarily to avoid pain at all costs. So why do these runners sprint directly toward it? Well, the thing is, they're not numb to the pain. They're actively rewriting its story. Pain stops being a warning signal and becomes data. It becomes proof that their mind is stronger than their body.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of serious leisure fits in perfectly. This isn't just a weekend jog. For a true marathoner, it's basically a voluntary career. It has a clear path of progression, it requires intense perseverance, and it comes with a powerful group identity. It's so much more than just a workout.
Okay, but let's be real. A huge part of this has to be the chemical payoff, the famous runner's high. To me, that sounds a lot like chasing a fix. And you're right to be skeptical. So let's dive into the neurobiology, because what's really going on in the brain is not what most people think.
For decades, everyone just assumed this feeling of euphoria came from a big rush of endorphins. But here's the scientific problem with that. Endorphin molecules are actually too big to cross the blood-brain barrier. So yeah, they might numb the pain in your legs, but they're not what's making you feel amazing up in your head.
So what is it? The real cause is something called endocannabinoids. And yes, that sounds like cannabis for a reason. It's basically the brain's own natural version of it. These molecules are fat-soluble, so they slip right into the brain and produce that euphoria/anxiety and numb pain. So they are literally drugging their own brains to cope with the pain. Is that a healthy reward system, or is it just self-medication?
And that brings me right back to the personality type you need to even do this. I mean, think about the months and months of grueling, isolated, frankly boring training. Are these people just disciplined, or is this really about an obsessive need for control?
Well, the data actually gives us a pretty clear picture. If you look at the big 5 personality traits, marathoners score way higher than average on conscientiousness and emotional stability. But they score lower on extroversion and agreeableness. So what you have are disciplined loners who don't really care about pleasing other people. Yeah, that tracks.
And let's just zoom in on that conscientiousness score for a second. It's freakishly high. You have to have an absurd level of focus and grit to put yourself through that kind of monotonous training for months on end. Exactly. But the question remains, is that healthy discipline, or is it a compulsive, obsessive need for order and control?
And here is the paradox that I think proves my point. While runners in general score high on emotional stability, some studies on multi-marathoners, we're talking the most extreme of the extreme, show they can actually have lower emotional stability. They're using the running as a crutch, as a coping mechanism to manage underlying vulnerabilities.
Okay, but maybe it's not a crutch so much as a tool. Let's talk about how running actually provides that escape. I don't think it's just about getting away from your problems. The simple, repetitive motion of putting one foot in front of the other becomes a kind of dynamic meditation. It's a way to empty the mind in our chaotic, overstimulated world.
Absolutely. Elite runners get incredibly good at something called cognitive offloading. They learn to switch back and forth between 2 different mental states. There's the associative state, where you're checking in with your body, your breathing, your form, and then there's the dissociative state, where you check out and distract yourself. This mental toggle switch basically lets them clear their brain's RAM and hit a pure flow state. But it's not all happening inside their heads, right? This is not just an internal battle. There's a massive social element here, almost like a cult of endurance, an entire identity that's forged in this fire of shared suffering.
It really is. A framework called self-determination theory explains it perfectly. Running hits on 3 core psychological needs. 1, autonomy. You have total control over your training. 2, competence. You're constantly mastering new goals. And 3, which is the surprising one, relatedness. That social bond, that shared struggle, is an incredibly powerful motivator.
And this is where the magic really happens. The identity shifts from something you do, I run, to something you are, I am a runner.
That title, which you have to earn through so much pain, becomes this powerful suit of armor for your self-esteem. You're not just an accountant anymore, you're a marathoner.
Okay, armor for self-esteem, I'll buy that. But that brings us right back to where we started. If your entire identity is wrapped up in this single grueling activity, where do you draw the line between a healthy passion and a really destructive dependency?
That is the million-dollar question. At what point does this powerful coping mechanism turn into a cage? When does the one thing that makes you feel totally in control actually start to control you?
And this is where it gets dark. Because for people with a true emotional exercise addiction, what happens when they get injured? When that coping mechanism is taken away? They experience real psychological withdrawal symptoms: irritability, depression, severe anxiety. That GPS watch is no longer a tool for fitness, it's a compulsive need to avoid facing real life.
And that, I think, is where we land. It's this beautiful, fascinating paradox. You're both right. They run to escape immense mental pressure, but they do it by seeking out extreme physical torture. That finish line, it's not just a finish line. It's a physical monument to the fact that their minds are infinitely stronger than they ever thought possible.
So here's what you should take away from all this. The next time you see someone out there running at 4 in the morning in the freezing rain, don't just think, wow, they're really fit. Realize that what you are watching is someone battling and conquering their own mind.